Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to be going through the skills in Middle-earth Shadow of War to give you a better understanding of each one and to give recommendations for brutal difficulty. This guide will include skills that are unlocked near the end of the story, so if you don't want these very mild spoilers, this is your warning. My name is Parkattack. Let's get going. The first skill in the combat tree is Execution. Fill up your might bar to perform an execution that'll instantly kill a grunt or deal heavy damage to a captain, olog, or large beast. Grim Resolve grants might when you take damage. Secret Might grants extra might for undetected kills, and Fatal Might grants a significant amount of extra might for each sword strike, but all might can be lost upon taking damage, missing, or exiting combat. I tend to stay away from skills and abilities centered around taking damage or losing health, such as Grim Resolve, because avoiding damage altogether is just better. Fatal Might requires fluid combat, with little room for error, but the reward far outweighs the risk. I always pick Fatal Might, but Secret Might can also be taken as a safer but less rewarding option. With correct timing, your enemy is knocked to the ground with perfect counter. Rain of Arrows replenishes one elf shot when performing a perfect counter. Mighty Reversal grants a small amount of might, and Fatal Counter will instantly kill enemy grunts instead of knocking them to the ground. At first, Fatal Counter sounds like the obvious choice, but killing enemy grunts one by one isn't a very efficient way to deal with them. Knocking one to the ground, however, can be extremely useful for setting up combos. For these reasons, I suggest not using Fatal Counter and instead go with either Rain of Arrows or Mighty Reversal, depending on which resource you value more. Critical Strike simply gives you a small chance to do extra damage on sword strikes. Reprisal increases that chance as your health gets lower. Unstoppable will greatly increase your critical strike chance as long as your hit streak is above 20. Elven Precision increases your critical strike chance by a significant amount by repressing your attack button right before your strike lands. Unfortunately, there isn't a good indicator of when you're timing this correctly, but there also isn't a penalty for mistiming it. Reprisal once again requires taking damage, and Unstoppable's hit streak bonus is too inconsistent, so I like to go with Elven Precision. Ground Finisher increases the speed of your ground executions. Fury generates a ton of might with a flurry of strikes. Wraith Shield allows you to counter one enemy while performing a ground execution, and Ground Drain will instantly drain an enemy that's been knocked down. This opens up several useful actions, such as the Shadow Strike Ground Drain combo or the Ground Drain Wraith Chain combo. The might gain from Flurry is substantial, but hard to pull off without getting interrupted, and all Wraith Shield really does is keep you safe while you attack one enemy. Ground Drain is the easy choice here for the flexibility. Brutal Aggression doubles the size of your might bar, allowing you to pull off a brutal execution when full, causing enemies to flee in terror. The Wraith Execution upgrade allows you to chain executions to other enemies by consuming focus, and Seize Might allows you to keep your leftovers after using an ability that consumes might. Essentially, if you have a full bar, you can use 2 might abilities in a row, or if you have over half a bar, you can use one ability, and the might that isn't used will count towards your next ability. There are better ways to chain attacks than Wraith Execution, so I always take Seize Might for its efficiency. Retaliation lets you instantly kill an enemy that downed you if you can time your last chance right. Adamant grants you an extra last chance. Vengeful Drain will drain your target, and Burst of Might will fill up your might bar. On brutal difficulty, you only get one last chance by default, so I like to go with Adamant here. While draining your target or gaining full might both sound enticing, they only work on targets you can kill with retaliation, ruling out captains and ranged units. Adamant will always give you an extra last chance, once again proving that consistency wins out. Elven Agility simply makes climbing faster. The Silent Runner upgrade does next to nothing, supposedly silencing your sprinting. Spectral Dash is a nice gap closer, and pairs extremely well with the Mask of the Undying, the single item in the game that might be considered too good not to use. However, even if you're not using it, Silent Runner doesn't offer much, so Spectral Dash is still the best choice. A Brutalized kill will cause nearby enemy grunts to flee in terror. Unyielding Ferocity grants extra might and hit streak bonuses, and Reckless Hate will cause more enemy grunts to flee. This can affect an entire group of enemy grunts, clearing them all out and giving you more fleeing targets. While extra might is always useful, you already gain a substantial amount for Brutalize itself, so I prefer the utility of Reckless Hate. Poison Tendril allows you to poison grog barrels from a distance at the cost of all your focus. Bursting Toxin causes enemy grunts poisoned by the grog to explode when killed. Contagion makes them go berserk and spread the poison by attacking each other, and Proximity Trigger will set beast traps that trigger when an enemy gets close. To be honest, this skill and all its upgrades have very little impact on gameplay, seeing as there are much easier ways to poison enemies, and Proximity Trigger is just completely unnecessary. I'd take Contagion, but any of them can be used as they're all pretty equally useless. Wraith Chain, on the other hand, is an extremely useful skill, allowing you to chain stealth attacks. Monster Hunter allows you to stealth kill beasts, and Shadow Blade lets you chain your first attack without costing any focus. Generally speaking, dominating beasts is easy, so I always go with Shadow Blade. This turns one stealth kill into 2 for free, and gives you +1 to any chain, making it much more useful than Monster Hunter. Deadly Spectre allows you to set a trap that baits an enemy into a stealth attack while you remain undetected. Terrifying Presence will brutalize your target, and Spirit Drain will stealth drain it. Being able to drain undetected can be useful in certain builds, but brutalizing undetected is generally much better, even though both are pretty situational. I always go with Terrifying Presence here, but Spirit Drain can also be viable. Death Threat allows you to threaten a captain with intel, and upon killing the captain, receive better loot drop chances. If you've seen my leveling guide, you know that I strongly suggest staying away from the worse than death upgrade while leveling. On the off chance the captain becomes a maniac, it'll only be 5 levels higher than you at max level, so it's not nearly as threatening as it would be while leveling. Vow of Violence grants very minimal rewards, such as low level gems or a handful of Mirian, so the only real reason to choose this upgrade is if you decide you don't want to use worse than death. The first ranged skill in the tree is Detonate. Shadow Strike to a fire pit and blow up anything nearby. Bursting Arrow allows you to simply stay where you are and shoot fire pits to detonate them. Spider Song summons spiders when you detonate, and Matron's Scent summons ghouls. These can both be used to exploit captain weaknesses, so switch between them when necessary. For general use, I like to keep Spider Song on, because spiders are generally more effective than ghouls, and Bursting Arrow just doesn't bring enough to the table. Next up is Freeze Pin. Shoot an enemy in the foot to freeze them in place. Brutal Cold causes nearby enemies to flee in terror. Savage Ice allows you to pin Ologs and beasts, and Deep Freeze doubles the pin duration. Pinning Ologs is pretty much only useful if you have an Olog captain weakness to exploit. Deep Freeze can be used to pin one difficult enemy while you take care of another, but collateral damage like an explosion or an ally's attack usually ends up freeing the target. Each of these upgrades are viable, but I like to go with the utility of Brutal Cold. Causing enemies to flee is always useful for clearing mobs, but I'll temporarily switch to Savage Ice when needed. Bird of Prey will slow time for you while using your ranged weapon mid-air. Eagle Sight slows focus consumption, allowing you to stay in the air longer. Talon Strike allows you to slam the ground beneath you, damaging and stunning nearby enemies at the cost of 1 elf shot. Although this might seem useful, there are generally better options for AoE. Eagle Sight, on the other hand, grants you the unique ability to nearly stop time mid-air. In another case of usefulness over flashiness, Eagle Sight is the better option. Mighty Shot is the first skill of a few that has 3 equally interchangeable upgrades. The skill itself allows you to use your might and 1 elf shot to fire an explosive shot, and the upgrades change the explosive effect to either fire, frost, or poison. Depending on your build, all 3 of these are viable and all 3 are interchangeable. Pick whichever one you need and change it at will. Shadow Strike allows you to teleport to an enemy and either damage them or knock them down at the cost of 2 elf shot. Chain of Shadows allows you to chain Shadow Strikes, costing focus for each strike after the initial one. Shadow Strike Pull allows you to pull enemies to you, and Shadow Dominate allows you to instantly dominate your target instead of damaging or knocking them down. First off, let's just get Shadow Strike Pull out of the way, which is completely outclassed by the other 2. While Shadow Dominate might seem better at first, I actually prefer Chain of Shadows. Chaining Shadow Strike kills is an extremely quick and efficient way to clear mobs. On top of that, together with the Ground Drain upgrade, you can Shadow Strike to an enemy, knock them down, and immediately drain them. To put it into simpler terms, The combination of Chain of Shadows and Ground Drain allows you to basically do the same thing as Shadow Dominate with the added benefit of the chain. If for some reason you aren't using Ground Drain, Shadow Dominate might be better, but I always take Ground Drain and I always take Chain of Shadows. Brace of Daggers allows you to quickly throw a dagger. The Serrated Edge upgrade gives your thrown dagger a critical strike chance. Swift Barrage lets you throw 3 daggers quickly in a row, and Rain of Blades throws 5 daggers out in front of you at once in a fan. When using Serrated Edge or Swift Barrage, the dagger won't miss as long as there's an enemy near its path. Rain of Blades, however, does not have this effect, and instead, the daggers just travel along straight paths, only hitting an enemy if it's in the way. Unfortunately, there isn't a ton of use for throwing daggers, aside from killing ghouls, and with Rain of Blades, the daggers go right over the ghouls' heads. Because of this, I tend to go with Serrated Edge, but Swift Barrage is just as useful. Elven Light allows you to use your might to slam the ground and blind all nearby enemies, with the upgrades once again changing the effect to either fire, frost, or poison. Pick and rotate at will, but keep in mind it might be a good idea to use this skill to fill the elemental needs of your build along with Mighty Shot. For instance, if you do a lot of poison damage naturally, it might be a good idea to take the frost upgrade for Mighty Shot and the fire upgrade here. This way you always have the elements at your disposal without having to constantly go into your menus and switch the upgrades around. Ice Storm allows you to freeze a single enemy and follow up with a flurry of sword attacks. Shower of Ice creates a cone behind your target that freezes any other enemies it hits. Frostbite turns your flurry finisher into a critical hit, and Shattering Blow shatters your target if you're able to finish your flurry, causing nearby enemies to flee in terror. The AoE from Shower of Ice is small and ineffective, being overshadowed by either Mighty Shot or Elven Light's frost upgrades. Frostbite and Shattering Blow are kind of similar, but Shattering Blow is superior in a couple ways. The shatter effect will kill larger enemies like Ologs, but causing enemy grunts to flee is the real benefit, so I always take Shattering Blow. Consume uses might to instantly drain an enemy during combat. Chain of Souls is yet another chain that allows multiple enemies to be drained at the cost of focus. Lord of Wrath will increase your wrath when Consume is used, and Olag Lord simply allows Ologs to be consumed. Chain of Souls has some notable synergy with Domination, allowing you to regain a ton of health as well as convert several enemy grunts to fight for you in the middle of combat. However, there aren't many things more frustrating than trying to consume in the heat of battle to regain health, only to be thrown to the ground by an Olag that you clearly weren't targeting. Olag Lord negates that frustration, and that's good enough for me. However, don't be afraid to take either of the other 2 upgrades for this skill, as they can both be viable in certain builds. Treasure Hunter allows you to pick up items automatically. Discerning Eye increases your chances of receiving higher quality gear from loot drops. Mindbreaker increases domination speed, and Prospector will guarantee that any gem that drops from an enemy will drop 1 level higher. There are already several ways to dominate that are instantaneous, so right off the bat we can throw Mindbreaker out the window. Discerning Eye and Prospector are both extremely useful upgrades that should be utilized in different situations. When running death threats or any activity in which lots of gear is dropping, such as fortress sieges, Discerning Eye should be used to increase odds of epics. When doing anything else, use Prospector. Perfect gems are used to reroll secondary stats on gear, so I cannot stress the amount of value in this upgrade enough. Get it as soon as possible and use it constantly, except for when you're farming epics. Raise Dead is the final skill in the Wraith tree, which isn't accessible until the end of the story. It allows you to use might to resurrect nearby dead grunts, turning them into undead allies. Death Throw allows Ologs to be resurrected, and Mighty Beast allows Caragors and ghouls to be resurrected. Undying Loyalty, however, is a little more complicated. The way it's described in-game makes it seem like you can kill a captain and then resurrect him on the spot, which isn't at all how it actually works. Instead, it only works on allied captains that have already died. You simply go to the army screen, select the dead captain, and then select Resurrect. When they come back to life, they'll be undead, meaning they receive a weakness to fire damage, they become unbreakable, they can't level up, and they can't be resurrected a second time. You only need to have this upgrade active when you want to resurrect an allied captain in the army screen, so it makes sense to run with one of the others until you feel like rezzing one. I personally think Death Troll is better than Undying Beast, but this one is really up to you. Caragor Rider gives you the ability to dominate and mount Caragors. The Pounce upgrade grants extra health on stealth devours, but not combat devours. Bestial Rage allows you to howl and perform mounted executions at the cost of your mount's health if you don't have enough might. Caragors are extremely common, which makes them somewhat expendable. With this upgrade, you can mount a Caragor and immediately start executing and howling until it dies, and then hop on another. Bestial Rage is the winner here, as it adds much more flexibility than Pounce. Graug Rider, similar to Caragor Rider, allows you to dominate and mount Graugs. Devouring Force restores more health on executions, and Enduring Fury causes your Graug's basic attacks to generate more might. These two upgrades are similar in the fact that they both help your Graug heal more. Devouring Force simply makes the heal stronger, but Enduring Fury allows you to execute more often, increasing the rate of healing as well as killing more enemies. For this reason, Enduring Fury is the best of the two. Next up, we have one of our most utilized skills, Call Mount. The three upgrades are all useful and interchangeable, one turning your mount into a Dire Caragor, one to a Graug, and one to a Drake. Not only is Call Mount used exactly as it sounds to call yourself a mount, but it can be used to exploit captain weaknesses as well. Some captains are dazed by certain beasts, and some just take more damage from all beasts, so pick whichever one works best for the situation. Shadow Mount is another extremely useful skill that allows you to dominate and mount broken beasts with a Shadow Strike, costing you 2 Elf Shot. Caragor Breaker allows you to mount unbroken Caragors, and Packmaster will dominate any nearby Caragors when shadow mounting. Although mounting unbroken Caragors is somewhat convenient, I like to go with Packmaster. Caragors are often roaming in packs. Shadow mount one, and the whole pack is on your side. Dragon Rider is once again similar to the Caragor and Graug Rider skills, allowing you to dominate and mount Drakes. Scales of Iron increases your Drake's defenses, and Soaring Rage allows you to shoot fireballs by sacrificing health if you don't have enough might. While I do suggest sacrificing health for more utility on Caragors, I cannot recommend the same on Drakes. Drakes are much more rare than Caragors, and in turn, less expendable. If a Caragor dies, it's not too hard to find another. If a Drake dies, chances are you're going to have to wait until your Call Mount cooldown resets to get another. This, along with the fact that your might bar fills up plenty quickly from using Flame Breath, I go with Scales of Iron over Soaring Rage. Drain an enemy to recover health, while damaging them and causing them to flee in terror. The Domination upgrade itself is one that builds can be centered around, making your drains dominate enemies. Quiver of Souls will grant 4 Elf Shot along with the standard health gain for each drain, whereas Bright Lord's Wrath will grant Wrath and fully heal you. All 3 of these upgrades are viable in different builds. If you want more allied grunts, take Dominate. If you want a consistent method of replenishing Elf Shot, take Quiver of Souls. And if you want to generate more Wrath, take Bright Lord's Wrath. I personally like to go with Quiver of Souls, but you can't really go wrong here. Spectral Glaive allows you to hold and release your attack button to perform a sweeping glaive attack. Mighty Swing will grant a substantial amount of might for each enemy hit with the correct timing, and Deadly Striker allows you to double your charge attack and follow up with multiple swings. Mighty Swing is one of the fastest ways to fill your might bar in a large fight, so I prefer it over Deadly Striker, which can be difficult to fully utilize. Ring Wraith is another skill you won't receive until the end of the story, along with Raise Dead. This skill replaces Elven Rage as your Wrath Spender, but the upgrades remain similar. Ring Wraith does not slow time like Elven Rage. Instead, it summons a group of wights, makes their attacks deal more damage, and constantly generates might. When it's finished, you'll raise some of your dead enemies as Revenants, and they'll have either fire, poison, or cursed weapons depending on what upgrade you take. I tend to go with cursed weapons, as sources of cursed damage are a little more rare, but this one, once again, is really up to you. Shadow Strider allows you to double jump, but its upgrades provide much more unique benefits that enhance dodging and vaulting. Hammer of Eregion will freeze any enemy you vault over. Waters of Lorien replaces your dodge and vault with a Spectral Dash, consuming focus, and Eagle's Eerie allows you to double jump off a vault. This can give you some much needed elevation during large fights, and although Waters of Lorien sounds good, it's completely redundant if you've already taken Spectral Dash. Hammer of Eregion is viable if you want another way to freeze enemies, but Eagle's Eerie is always my first choice. With no upgrades, Call Followers will summon regular allied grunt warriors. However, with the first upgrade Bodyguard, it becomes much more effective, allowing you to summon your favorite allied captain to fight alongside you. Cluster of Spiders allows you to summon spiders that will follow you around and attack nearby enemies, and Iron Guard summons tougher grunts. Iron Guard can be modified by certain gear, but still remains subpar. Cluster of Spiders is not as consistently useful as Bodyguard, but can be used to exploit captain weaknesses when necessary. Use Bodyguard often, and summon spiders when needed. Dominate Captain allows you to do just that. Dominate broken captains. Destroy Followers will kill nearby allied grunts, causing enemy grunts to flee in terror. Lifeblood takes health from you and heals your followers. And with Enraged Followers, you spend Wrath to enrage your allies, even though in the description it only specifies captains. This one is somewhat of a toss-up between Destroy Followers and Enraged Followers. If you don't mind spending a good chunk of your Wrath, Enraged Followers can be very useful. And if you don't mind sacrificing a few allies to get rid of a few enemies, Destroy Followers is what you want, but either way, you're most likely going to want to stay away from Lifeblood. And that is going to do it for this video. If you want to see my face and talk to it, you can check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/parkattack. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you will, but more importantly, let me know what you think in the comments. Peace.